If a woman confesses to her husband's murder on a live, nationwide podcast, while he is sitting directly in front of her, breathing, and drinking a glass of water, who dies when the broadcast finally ends? Record log. May 28, 2026. Case reference. The Long Island Alibi. Investigators called it a media stunt for exactly 24 hours. In the high-walled, multi-million-dollar estates of the Hamptons, New York, secrets aren't buried in the backyard. They are curated. They are hidden behind manicured hedges, protected by private security details, and discussed in whispers over charity luncheons. In a world where everyone has a team of crisis managers, a clean reputation is the ultimate currency. Most people think a confession is the end of a case, the final piece of the puzzle, the moment the handcuffs click shut. But they are wrong. The most dangerous killers don't hide their crimes. They broadcast them. They plan their alibi in front of millions of witnesses, using the media as their shield. The kind of killer who knows exactly how to create an airtight digital record that makes physical reality completely impossible to prove. Let's look at the evidence. Let's establish the geography. Southampton, Long Island, an oceanfront estate, sits at the end of a private road. It was the summer residence of Richard Ellison, a prominent billionaire hedge fund manager whose firm controlled half the commercial real estate on the eastern seaboard, and his wife, Martha Reynolds. Martha was a former high-profile media strategist, brilliant, calculating, and completely aware of how to control a room. To the public, they were the ultimate power couple. But at 9:15 on a Tuesday evening, Martha sat in her home studio, conducting a live, streaming interview with America's top true crime podcast network. The audio was being streamed directly to over 3 million active listeners. Exactly 40 minutes into the interview, Martha looked directly into her microphone. Her voice didn't shake. Her pulse didn't spike. She spoke with a calm, chilling precision that left the host completely paralyzed. Let's listen to the raw archive tape of that broadcast. Let the audio record speak for itself. The podcast host is speaking. So, Martha, after 10 years of marriage to one of the most powerful men in finance, how do you handle the constant public scrutiny? Martha takes a slow, deliberate breath. You can hear the slight clink of ice in a glass against the microphone. You don't handle it, Martha says. You control it. For instance, right now, the police are driving up my driveway. I called them 5 minutes before we went on the air, because exactly 1 hour ago, I put 20 milligrams of a tasteless, undetectable cardiac paralytic into Richard's decaf espresso. The host laughs, assuming it's a joke, a dark marketing hook for her upcoming book. That's quite an opening line, Martha. It's not a line, Martha whispers. His tone is completely flat. If your production team checks the live security feed of my pool house, right now, you will see him. He is face down in the water. He didn't struggle. He didn't even have time to finish the cup. I did it because he was going to empty the Blackwood Holdings Trust Fund tomorrow morning. He was going to leave me with nothing. So, I changed the narrative. The host's voice shifts to immediate panic. Martha, are you being serious? We are live on the air. I know we are live, Martha responds. That's the entire point. The police need a record. And you are my witnesses. Oh, look at that. I can see the blue lights reflecting off the living room glass right now. The officers are at the front door. I have to go. The line didn't cut. The streaming feed kept running, capturing the heavy, muffled sound of the local police officers breaching the front foyer, their boots echoing loudly against the limestone floors. When the first responding officers ran through the glass doors toward the Olympic-sized swimming pool, their flashlights cut through the Hamptons mist. They braced themselves for a gruesome crime scene. They expected to find a floating body. Instead, they found Richard Ellison. He was wearing a luxury linen suit. He was sitting in a custom poolside lounger. He was completely dry, and he was holding a half-empty glass of sparkling water. He looked at the officers with complete confusion. He wasn't paralyzed. His heart was beating perfectly. When Detective Marcus Finch breached the perimeter, Richard stood up, adjusted his jacket, and asked why the local precinct had sent 4 patrol cars to his private property. Martha Reynolds walked out of the pool house a moment later. She was calm. She wasn't holding a weapon. She looked at her husband, then looked at Detective Finch, and simply smiled. She told the officers she had no idea why the podcast host would claim she confessed to a murder. She claimed she had been conducting a standard, pre-scripted interview about media manipulation, and that the confession was merely a reading from a fictional crime novel she was helping to develop. The podcast network immediately pulled the audio, but the damage was done. The clip had already been ripped and shared millions of times across social media platforms. It looked like the ultimate hoax, a brilliant, albeit twisted, PR stunt designed to generate massive public engagement for her new media venture. The police chief was furious. Richard was embarrassed but smooth. He told Finch his wife had been under immense professional stress and apologized for the disruption. Finch had no body. He had no physical evidence of a crime. He couldn't make an arrest based on an audio clip when the supposed victim was standing in front of him, threatened to sue the department for harassment. So the police left. They logged it as a high-profile false alarm until exactly 24 hours later, at 9:15 the following evening, the exact same time as the broadcast, Richard Ellison's car left the road on the Long Island Expressway. The vehicle struck a concrete bridge abutment at 90 miles per hour. When the medical examiner pulled Richard's body from the wreckage, the autopsy revealed his car hadn't suffered a mechanical failure. His hands were frozen to the steering wheel. His heart had stopped due to an acute, massive dose of a tasteless, cardiac paralytic, the exact drug Martha had named on the live podcast the night before. Let's look into the internal mechanics of the Blackwood investigation. Detective Finch didn't close the file. He knew that in the Hamptons, a coincidence is just a conspiracy that hasn't been unraveled yet. He brought Martha Reynolds into the precinct on May 29th. He sat her down in interrogation room 2. "Martha," Finch said, sliding the toxicology report across the table, "your husband is dead. He died from the exact substance you bragged about using on a live broadcast 30 hours ago. Now, you want me to believe that you predicted his exact cause of mouth as a joke?" Martha leaned back, her designer coat draped over her shoulders. Her expression on the security camera tape is completely unbothered. "Detective," she said softly, "I am a media strategist. I understand how timelines work. On Tuesday night at 9:15, I was sitting in my studio, surrounded by 3 production assistants, an audio engineer, and over 3 million listeners. Your own officers verified Richard was alive and well at 9:45. Last night, when his car left the highway, I was attending a charity gala at the Museum of Modern Art in Manhattan. I was photographed by 40 different journalists. I spoke to the mayor. I was on camera continuously from 7 p.m. until midnight." She leaned forward, her eyes locking onto the detective. "I have a physical alibi for Tuesday night because Richard didn't die. And I have a physical alibi for Wednesday night because I was 60 miles away in a room full of politicians. You cannot charge me for a murder that happened while I was on television, and you cannot charge me for a murder that didn't happen when I said it did." Finch reviewed the digital forensics. She was right. The timeline was completely airtight. If she had poisoned him on Tuesday, he should have been dead within 20 minutes. He wasn't. If she poisoned him on Wednesday, she had to have physically administered the drug while sitting at a gala in Manhattan. Impossible. But then Finch checked the vehicle log of Richard's luxury sedan. The car was equipped with an automated, smart heating system that kept a custom thermal travel mug warm in the center console. The mug had been filled from the kitchen espresso machine at the estate on Wednesday morning, 12 hours after the police had left the house. Martha hadn't poisoned his drink on Tuesday night. She had poisoned the lining of the internal intake valve inside the estate's high-end espresso machine. She knew the police would search the kitchen on Tuesday if Richard was dead. She knew they would test the cups, the sink, the trash. So, she didn't put the drug in his drink. She built a mechanical delay. She engineered the machine so that the poison would only dissolve into the water lines after the unit had been completely flushed, cleaned, and cycled through exactly 4 times. She knew Richard would drink espresso on Wednesday morning before his commute. She knew the poison would enter his system while he was on the highway, miles away from her. And the podcast confession, it wasn't a hoax. It was her legal insurance policy. She had openly confessed to a crime before it happened, knowing that when the police found him alive, it would legally invalidate the confession in a court of law. She created a double exposure, a digital illusion that made the truth look like a technical error. Let's look at the financial trail. Why would a woman destroy a billionaire husband if she already lived in a mansion on the ocean? Investigator John Vance from the Blackwood Division traced the assets of the Ellison estate. He discovered that on May 15th, 2 weeks before the live broadcast, Richard Ellison had initiated a complete restructuring of Blackwood Holdings, the primary corporate trust that held their joint international assets. The documents revealed that Richard had discovered a secondary ledger, a ledger that showed Martha had been systematically routing millions of dollars out of the hedge fund into a private account in the Cayman Islands. But she wasn't stealing the money for herself. The Cayman account was registered to a medical research firm in Switzerland that specialized in advanced neuroprosthetics and memory degradation treatments. The primary patient listed on the facility's private registry was Martha's younger sister, Rachel, a woman who had been officially listed as deceased following a house fire in Chicago 7 years ago. Richard had given Martha an ultimatum. He told her he was going to expose the financial fraud to the federal regulators on Wednesday morning. He was going to have her stripped of her board seats, take full custody of their children, and leave her with nothing but a public trial. He thought he had the upper hand because he had the paperwork. He didn't understand that Martha didn't fight with paper. She fought with focus. She used the live podcast to create a smokescreen. While the entire country was focused on the bizarre story of the hoax confession, her attorneys in Zurich were executing a pre-signed, automated power of attorney transfer that required Richard's active biometric signature. How did they get his signature on Wednesday morning if he was driving his car? They didn't. The smart steering wheel of his sedan was equipped with a continuous biometric palm scanner that verified the driver's identity for insurance purposes. Martha had modified the vehicle's internal software through a local network exploit. While Richard was driving down the Long Island Expressway, his palm on the wheel was actively authorizing the transfer of $84 million out of Blackwood Holdings into the Swiss Medical Trust. The software script was programmed to release the cardiac paralytic into his travel mug via an automated injection needle hidden inside the lid. The exact second the final financial transaction cleared the international server. The car crash wasn't an accident. It was the closing function of a digital loop. Let's examine the final piece of evidence recovered from the Southampton house. On June 2nd, Detective Finch returned to the empty estate. The property was silent. The pool water was perfectly still, reflecting the gray New York sky. Inside Martha's private studio, the recording equipment was still set up. The microphone was active. The digital workstation had been left running, idling in a power-saving mode. Finch put on the headphones and pulled up the unedited multitrack files from the Tuesday night broadcast. He didn't listen to Martha's track. He isolated the secondary ambient microphone, the one set up in the corner of the room to capture the room's acoustics. At exactly 42 minutes into the recording, right when Martha was telling the host that her husband was face down in the pool, there's a sound in the background. It isn't the wind. It isn't the rain against the glass. It is the sound of a second woman's voice. A low, flat whisper, standing right beside Martha's chair. The voice doesn't speak English. It repeats a series of numbers, a coordinate code that matches the exact location of the bridge pillar on the Long Island Expressway where Richard would die 24 hours later. The voice belonged to Rachel, the sister who was supposed to be in a Swiss medical clinic. The sister who officially died 7 years ago. Martha hadn't been working alone. The woman who boarded the flight to Zurich 2 days later wasn't Martha Reynolds. It was Rachel, wearing her sister's clothes, using her sister's passport, and carrying the $84 million into the Alpine Valley. The real Martha Reynolds was already gone. She had stepped out of the pool house on Tuesday night, past the flat tires of the security vehicles, and walked down into the dark surf of the Atlantic Ocean, leaving behind a perfect digital alibi, a dead billionaire, and a sister who had finally taken her place. The Long Island estate was liquidated by the State Asset Recovery Team within a month. The accounts under Blackwood Holdings have been frozen by federal injunction, but the servers in Zurich remain completely dark, protected by diplomatic encryption protocols that the Blackwood Division cannot breach. The file code 68 Gamma 1 is officially closed. But as an investigator, I will leave you with one final thought. The next time you listen to a true crime broadcast, The next time you hear a live confession or a shocking twist on your morning commute, don't just focus on the story being told. Focus on the timeline. Focus on the silence between the words. And make sure you know who is actually controlling the feed. If you want to hear more classified leaks from the Blackwood Vault, hit the subscribe button and leave a comment below with your theory about who is actually sitting in that studio on Maple Drive. This is the Blackwood Files. Record log officially ended.